You know that feeling, right? When there's that one thing you know you should be doing.
Uh-huh. Like something really important.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe prepping for that big presentation, the one
True.
that could mean a promotion,
Yeah.
or uh, finally starting that exercise routine you keep promising yourself.
Stuff that would have a huge positive impact, definitely. Better well-being, career boost.
Right. But
Yeah.
you can't seem to focus. You find yourself scrolling or maybe tidying the desk for the 10th time, feeling that restlessness.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there. It's such a common thing these days, isn't it?
Totally. And that's what we're diving into today. We've got this source, Dopamine Detox by Thibaut Meurisse.
Right. The subtitle is something like A Short Guide to Eliminate Distractions and Train Your Brain to Do Hard Things. It really tries to tackle that gap you mentioned, knowing what's important versus actually doing it.
Exactly. So our mission here really is to dig into why we might feel that way, why focus is so hard sometimes. We'll explore Meurisse's ideas about, well, how our brains get kind of wired in this modern world.
And then look at his proposed solution, this dopamine detox idea, as a way to maybe regain some of that focus and motivation.
Okay, so what are we covering? We need to talk about dopamine itself. Like, what is it actually doing?
Yeah. We'll start there. Then look at how Meurisse argues our dopamine systems get kind of hijacked today.
Hijacked, okay.
Yeah.
And then the potential upsides of taking a break from all that stimulation.
Exactly, the benefits. And finally, we'll get into the practical side is his 3-step method for actually doing a detox.
And he talks about different kinds, right? It's not just one big shutdown.
No, that's important. He covers a few options, like a full 48-hour detox, a shorter 24-hour one, and even what he calls a partial detox, maybe just cutting out your biggest distraction.
Okay, interesting. So let's jump in. Dopamine. We hear the word thrown around a lot. What's its actual job, according to the book?
Well, think of it as the brain's motivator, essentially. Meurisse explains it's a neurotransmitter, and its main role is to make us anticipate rewards, things that are, good for survival food, relationships, that kind of thing.
So it drives us to act, to seek things out.
Precisely. It's the anticipation, the drive, the seeking, that's what dopamine fuels. It gets us moving towards a potential reward. It's like the engine for our motivation.
Okay, so this is interesting. The book makes a point that dopamine isn't actually the pleasure chemical itself. It's more about the chase.
That's a really crucial distinction, Meurisse highlights.
Yes.
While it's released before you get the reward, the feeling after you get it, well, he suggests it can often feel a bit empty, or at least very fleeting.
Huh. That makes you think, doesn't it? Like that next notification pops up, you check it, and then it's gone. The satisfaction, if there was any, is super quick.
Exactly. And you might start noticing that pattern if you pay attention, the constant seeking of this stimulation that never really delivers lasting satisfaction.
It feels like being on a hamster wheel sometimes. Always chasing the next little hit, checking the phone again, but never really feeling content.
And that constant seeking, Meurisse argues, can become a habit, a loop. He really prompts the reader us to think about our own, go-to sources of stimulation. Is it video games, social media, constantly hitting refresh on email,
Yeah.
and then ask, do these things genuinely make you happy in the long run? Or do they just keep you stuck in that seeking cycle?
It's like you can almost feel your self-control slipping away sometimes,
Yeah.
right? That urge for just one more bit of stimulation, even when you know it's not really what you need.
Mm-hmm. And the consequence, according to the book, is that when we're constantly bombarded with these easy, quick hits, those tasks that require real, sustained concentration, like writing something complex or working on a big project,
They suddenly feel incredibly boring or just hard.
exactly, they seem so much harder in comparison. And that's fertile ground for procrastination to take root.
So basically, dopamine was great for keeping us alive evolutionarily, pushing us towards food and mates.
Right.
But now, in this world overflowing with easy stimuli, that same system is kind of overloaded and maybe pointing us in less useful directions.
That's the core argument Meurisse makes, yeah. It's been hijacked, in a way.
Okay, hijacked. And he calls dopamine the molecule of more, which makes sense. The more you trigger it, the more you want, like with, obvious addictions.
Yes, that self-reinforcing mechanism is clear with things like drugs or alcohol. But Meurisse really broadens the definition of what can feel addictive in this dopamine-driven sense.
Like what kind of things?
Well, activities like gambling, sure, but also shopping, sex, even things like rumination, getting stuck in negative thought loops. Video games, of course, maybe even extreme exercise or becoming a workaholic.
Wow.
He asks you to reflect. Is there anything you do that you feel you really couldn't go a day without? Something that makes you feel genuinely uneasy if you skip it? That could be a sign it has a stronger pull than you realize.
That's a slightly uncomfortable question to ask yourself, honestly. But okay, so how is this system being actively, targeted or overloaded today?
Well, Meurisse points to several factors. Think about marketers. Billions spent specifically to grab your attention, even for a split second.
Right.
Apps are often deliberately designed using psychological principles to be hooking, to keep you coming back.
Yeah, you hear about that. Infinite scroll.
Exactly. Social media companies, their whole business model often relies on how much time you spend on their platform. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, they profit from your engagement. And even simple notifications, that little buzz or red dot, they trigger that dopamine release, that anticipation of maybe seeing something interesting, even if it just ends up wasting your time.
And behind it all are these super smart algorithms,
Yeah.
right? Amazon suggesting products, YouTube lining up the next video, Facebook tailoring your feed.
Yes, they create these personalized, never-ending loops of potential stimulation. It can definitely feel, as Meurisse puts it, like you're being used by the internet rather than intentionally using it as a tool.
I've definitely felt that way. You go online for one thing and an hour later, where did the time go?
He gives some really common examples of things that trigger that dopamine hit with the expectation of a reward. Checking email, hoping for a good message or interesting news.
Yep.
Checking stats could be your investment portfolio, website traffic, whatever. That unpredictability makes it even more compelling.
Oh, right, like a slot machine.
Kind of, yeah. Visiting YouTube, expecting interesting videos, scrolling social media, hoping for likes, comments, messages, or just something new and engaging.
Each one is a little gamble for a reward.
Exactly. And the sum total of all this, day in and day out, is that feeling of being overstimulated, scattered, and finding it really hard to maintain focus.
Your brain just gets used to that high level of input, so normal stuff feels dull.
Right. And the book also dives into food, which is another huge dopamine driver.
Ah, yes. Sugar and fat.
Exactly. Meurisse mentions research, like from Professor Suzanne Klaus, highlighting our innate craving for sweet things, that evolutionary drive for calories. And the combination of sugar and fat is apparently particularly effective at stimulating the brain's reward system.
Which the food industry knows very well.
Oh, absolutely. There are masters at using sugar, fat, and salt to make processed foods hyper-palatable, creating cravings and encouraging us to eat more.
Is it actually addiction, though? The book talks about that debate, right?
It does. Meurisse touches on different viewpoints. Some researchers, like Robert Lustig, apparently argue sugar can be addictive, maybe like nicotine. Others, like Dr. Ziauddin, he mentions, suggest that while sugar definitely lights up the reward system, it doesn't necessarily hijack it in the same profound way as addictive drugs do.
Okay.
And then another perspective mentioned from Tom Sandels is that our liking for sugar is maybe more like a powerful, ingrained habit rather than a true addiction with severe withdrawal symptoms like you'd see with hard drugs.
So the takeaway isn't necessarily to label it addiction in the clinical sense,
Probably not for most people, no.
but to recognize that sugar and processed fats are potent stimulators of that reward pathway and definitely contribute to that overall feeling of being overstimulated and maybe less in control of our choices.
Exactly. So reducing intake seems like a sensible strategy if you're looking to improve focus and feel less driven by cravings.
Makes sense. And this constant stimulation, it doesn't just mess with our focus right now, does it? The book argues it affects our long-term thinking too.
Yes, significantly. Meurisse brings up research by Dr. Edward Banfield from Harvard, I think, which found that having a long-time perspective, basically, the ability to think about future consequences when making decisions now was a major predictor of success in life.
Which is kind of the opposite of chasing immediate gratification all the time.
Precisely. And our modern digital environment, with its instant feedback loops, constant novelty, and short-form everything, really pushes us towards short-term thinking.
We see this conflict all the time, don't we? Like knowing we should eat healthy for long-term well-being, but grabbing the junk food instead. Or knowing we need to study, but firing up Netflix.
Or planning to exercise but getting lost on social media for an hour. It's that constant battle. Meurisse even mentions how Steve Jobs apparently limited his own kids' use of iPads and iPhones.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, and quotes Chamath Palihapitiya talking about how social media's super fast feedback loops can rewire our brains, making us less patient.
So that expectation of instant results starts bleeding into other areas of life.
That's the idea. We get used to quick fixes and immediate responses online, and it can distort our view of how things work in the real world. We develop these inaccurate ideas that success should be quick and easy.
Which can lead to feeling pretty bad when it's inevitably not quick and easy.
Definitely. Meurisse talks about the negative emotions that can follow jealousy of others' curated online successes, feeling inadequate, getting trapped in that hustle culture mentality, always searching for the next shortcut instead of committing to the long haul.
Like forgetting that most big achievements require patience and consistent effort over time. He uses Amazon as an example, right?
Yeah, pointing out how they operated for years without making a profit, playing the long game. It's a stark contrast to the instant gratification we often crave.
So it really hammers home this idea that society, or at least parts of it, are almost designed to exploit our dopamine system for profit.
And a side effect is that our focus gets eroded, we feel restless, and maybe even start feeling bad about ourselves.
And this overstimulation, the book argues, is a major, maybe even primary reason we procrastinate, even if we don't realize it.
Yes, he presents it as a key culprit that's often overlooked. Think about the typical morning routine for many people.
Grab the phone before you're even fully awake.
Exactly. Check emails, scroll social media. You're flooding your brain with dopamine before you've even decided what's actually important for the day.
And then when you try to sit down and do that difficult, important task,
It feels incredibly dull and unappealing in comparison. Your brain's already attuned to a different stimulation wavelength, one that's much higher intensity than what's needed for deep, focused work.
like the writer example in the book, after scrolling through exciting social media, the act of sitting down to write just seems...
Precisely. And Meurisse points out these little mental tricks, these stimulation traps, our minds play on us to keep us in that overstimulated state.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, one is thinking, oh, it's fine, I can easily get back to work whenever I want. That illusion of control.
I got that.
Another is the classic procrastination line, I'll just do it later, letting it become a habit.
Yeah.
Then there's confusing that brief hit of excitement from a notification or a new video with actual deep fulfillment. They're not the same thing.
Right. One's fleeting, the other lasts.
And finally, there's FOMO, the fear of missing out. That nagging feeling that if you don't check your email or the news or social media right now, you'll miss something crucial.
That FOMO is so strong, it takes real effort to resist it. I know I've had to actively train myself, like Meurisse mentions doing, to just not check things constantly, not answer every call immediately.
It's about challenging that scarcity mindset, realizing you probably won't miss anything earth-shattering in the next hour.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of the problem. Dopamine systems getting overloaded, leading to distraction, procrastination, and maybe even impacting long-term thinking. So this brings us to the solution proposed in the book, the dopamine detox. What exactly is it?
Basically, Meurisse defines it as intentionally reducing the amount of stimulation you expose yourself to. The main goal is to prevent that state of overstimulation and create a mental environment where it's easier to focus on important, often challenging tasks.
It's like hitting a reset button for your brain's sensitivity levels.
Kind of, yeah. Though he does include a little disclaimer scientifically, the term dopamine detox might be a bit misleading.
Oh, how so?
It's less about literally fleshing out too much dopamine and more about the fact that when you're constantly overstimulated, your brain receptors become less sensitive. You need bigger and bigger hits of stimuli to get the same effect.
Ah, okay. Tolerance, basically.
Exactly. So the detox is about letting that sensitivity reset. By lowering the overall stimulation, your brain can return to a more natural baseline, where less intense things, including focused work, become more engaging and appealing again.
Makes sense. And you mentioned there are different ways to do this?
Right. He outlines 3 main approaches. The most intense is the 48-hour complete dopamine detox.
Okay, what does complete mean here?
It means trying to eliminate or at least drastically reduce most or all major external sources of stimulation for 2 full days.
Wow. Like what kind of things are off limits?
The list is pretty comprehensive, obviously drugs and alcohol,
Uh-huh.
also intense exercise, using the internet, watching movies or TV, listening to most music maybe, except very calm, relaxing stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely no phone use, no social media, avoiding sugary or heavily processed foods, no video games,
So basically anything designed to be highly engaging or pleasurable.
pretty much. The aim is minimal sensory input. Quiet, stillness, simple
And
activity.
that sounds challenging.
Yeah.
What can you do during those 48 hours?
He suggests things like going for contemplative walks, really noticing your surroundings, journaling your thoughts and feelings, meditating or just relaxing quietly, doing simple awareness exercises, maybe reading, but only non-stimulating material, gentle stretching.
So very inward-focused, low-key activities. He compares it to something even more extreme, right?
Yeah, he mentions Vipassana meditation retreats, where you might spend days in complete silence, no eye contact, no phones, no reading, just meditation. Compared to that, a 48-hour break seems a bit more doable, maybe.
Maybe. Okay, so that's the 48-hour version. What else?
There's the 24-hour dopamine detox. Same idea, just for a shorter period. Easier to fit in, obviously. But Meurisse notes it might be less effective for a full reset, as it can take longer than a day for stimulation levels to really return to baseline.
Still maybe a good starting point for some people.
Could be. And then there's a third option, the partial dopamine detox. This one seems much more sustainable long term.
How does that work?
Instead of cutting out everything, you identify your single biggest source of distraction and overstimulation, the main culprit, and you focus on eliminating or drastically reducing just that one thing.
Ah, okay. So find your personal kryptonite.
Exactly. Maurice gives his own example of realizing YouTube was a huge time sink for him and specifically targeting that. He encourages you to figure out what your biggest attention drain is. Is it Instagram, email, news sites, video games?
And focus your efforts there. That sounds much less daunting.
It is. It's about making a targeted intervention where it will have the biggest impact for you personally.
All right, so we have these different levels of detox. How do you actually do one successfully? The book gives the 3-step method.
Yes, a clear process. Step number 1 is all about getting clear. Identify your biggest distractions.
So figuring out what needs to go on the can't-do list.
Precisely. He suggests actually making 2 lists. Cans, the things you are allowed to do during your detox period, and can'ts, the things you absolutely need to avoid.
How do you figure out what goes on the can'ts list, especially for a partial detox?
He provides guiding questions like, what single activity, if I stop doing it, would most improve my focus and productivity? Or what other things consistently pull my attention away and need to be avoided if I want to reset?
So really being honest with yourself about where your time and attention go.
Yes. Keep asking those questions until you have a clear list. And then this is important, Murray says, to keep that list visible. Put it on your desk, on your monitor, somewhere you'll see it constantly as a reminder of your commitment.
Okay, step 1, identify and list the distractions. What's step 2?
Step 2 is add friction.
Add fiction. What does that mean?
It's based on a simple principle. The harder something is to do, the less likely you are to do it, especially impulsively. So you want to intentionally make your can't activities more difficult to access.
Ah, okay, like hiding the cookies.
Exactly. So for your phone, adding friction might mean turning off all but the essential notifications, putting it on airplane mode when you need to focus, or even physically leaving it in another room.
Right. Out of sight, out of mind? Sort of.
For distracting websites or social media, you could use browser extensions that block them entirely during certain hours, or tools like Newsfeed Eradicator for Facebook, which removes the infinite scroll but still lets you check specific things.
Making it less appealing or harder to get sucked in? The book mentions an extreme example, didn't it?
Yeah, Meurisse talks about literally putting his internet modem in a hard-to-reach storage room to make mindlessly hopping online much more effortful.
Wow, okay. That's commitment.
But the flip side is just as important. You also want to reduce friction for your desired activities, the things on your cans list, or the important work you want to focus on after the detox.
So make the good stuff easier to do.
Yes. If you want to write, have your document open and ready when you sit down. If you want to meditate, have your cushion or chair set up. If you plan to exercise, lay out your clothes the night before. Make the path to your desired actions as smooth as possible.
So increase friction for the bad habits, decrease friction for the good ones. Makes sense. What's step 3?
Step 3 is start first thing in the morning.
Why first thing?
Because you want to begin your detox or your focused work period before you get caught in that cycle of overstimulation. Don't start the day by checking your phone or email if you can possibly avoid it.
Set the tone right from the beginning.
Exactly. The book strongly recommends creating a simple, positive morning routine that helps you start the day feeling calm and focused rather than reactive and scattered.
What kind of things could be in that routine?
Meurisse suggests reflecting on your current morning. Does it help or hinder your focus? Then consider incorporating things like a few minutes of meditation, some light stretching, listening to calming music, writing down your main goal for the day, listing things you're grateful for, or repeating some positive affirmations, something simple and grounding.
Okay, so the 3 steps are: 1, identify distractions and make clear can and can't lists.
Uh-huh.
2, add friction to the can'ts and reduce friction for the cans. 3, start your detox or focused work first thing with a positive morning routine.
That's the core method. And remember, how strictly you define those cans depends on whether you're doing the full 48-hour reset, the 24-hour version, or the partial detox focused on your biggest 1 or 2 drains.
Got it. Are there any other tips in the book to really maximize the benefits of doing this?
Yeah, a few good ones. One is to take notes during the detox.
Take notes.
Mm.
About what?
About how you're feeling. Notice when you feel restless or when you get that strong urge to check your phone or whatever your main distraction is. Jot down what triggers those urges. It helps you understand your own patterns and what's really going on in your brain.
Becoming more self-aware.
Exactly. Another big one is to use the quieter mental state that the detox creates for some deeper reflection on your life.
Like stepping back and looking at the bigger picture.
Right. Ask yourself, are my goals still right for me? Am I actually making progress towards them? Are my daily actions aligned with where I say I want to go? What am I spending my time on, really? What should I focus more on, and what maybe needs to go?
That sounds like a really valuable opportunity.
It can be. Meurisse also suggests using the time to tackle problems. Write down things that are worrying you and brainstorm potential solutions or next steps. Just getting them out of your head and onto paper can bring a lot of clarity.
Decluttering the mind.
And related to that, he suggests gently exploring any underlying fears or uncomfortable feelings that might surface when you're not constantly distracting yourself. Sometimes, he argues, that relentless search for stimulation is a way to avoid facing things. Writing those fears down can be the first step to addressing them.
So the detox isn't just about stopping bad habits. It's a chance for real insight and problem solving.
That's the potential, yes. And the whole point of lowering that stimulation baseline is ultimately to make it easier to do the work to tackle those important tasks you've been procrastinating on, which leads into the next part of the book, focusing on overcoming procrastination.
Right, because the detox prepares the ground, but you still need to actually plant the seeds, so to speak. How does planning fit in?
Planning your day intentionally is huge, according to Meurisse. When you proactively decide what you want to achieve, you're much less likely to just react to whatever pops up or get pulled into distractions.
It gives you direction.
Exactly. It clarifies what's important, reduces that mental noise of trying to remember everything, helps you transition smoothly between tasks, lowers stress, and makes you feel more in control, more proactive about your goals.
What's a simple way to do that? Does it need to be complicated?
No, he suggests something really simple. Just take a pen and paper each morning or the night before and list the 3 to 5 most important tasks you want to accomplish that day. Put them in order of priority. Then focus on number 1.
How do you identify those really key tasks, though? Sometimes everything feels important.
He offers some great filter questions, like, if I could only do one thing today, what would have the biggest positive impact? Or another good one, if I had to take a month off starting tomorrow, what's the one thing I absolutely must finish before I leave?
Those really force you to prioritize. And often the answer is that task you least feel like doing right.
Often, yes. The most important tasks are frequently the least appealing in the moment. And he says you can apply the same logic to planning your week, your month, your year, always tying it back to your long-term vision.
Working backwards from the big goals.
Yeah, reverse engineering. If your big goal is, say, writing a book, you break that down into monthly milestones, weekly targets, and then daily actionable tasks like write 500 words today.
Okay, plan the day, identify key tasks. What else?
A really crucial principle he emphasizes is scheduling one major task each morning, dedicating your prime energy time, usually the morning for most people, to your single most important task for that day.
The one that will really move the needle.
Exactly, because not all tasks are created equal. Focus on the ones that truly skyrocket your progress. Meurisse boils productivity down to three key things: focus, consistency, and impact.
Okay, define those.
Focus is your ability to concentrate without distraction. Consistency is showing up and doing the work regularly, building habits. And impact is choosing to work on the right things, the tasks that deliver the biggest results for your goals.
So real productivity is basically consistent focus
Yeah.
on high-impact activities.
That's the formula he presents. And developing that laser-sharp focus is critical.
How do you build that? Any specific tips?
Yes. He suggests creating a routine. Try to work at the same time in the same place each day if possible. He mentions Stephen King having a very disciplined writing routine as an example.
Rituals help.
They do. He also suggests having a trigger, a small action, that signals the start of your focus time, like making tea or doing a quick meditation. Then, the most important part, just get started. Even 5 minutes can build momentum and help you get into a flow state.
Action creates motivation, not the other way around.
Right. And, of course, eliminate distractions ruthlessly during that time. Phone off or silent, notifications disabled, close unnecessary tabs, maybe let people know not to disturb you.
And work in focus bursts.
Yeah, he recommends blocks of work, like maybe 45 minutes, followed by a short 5–10 minute break to rest your brain before the next block.
Okay, this sounds doable. Now, the book also talks about open systems versus closed systems. What's that about?
This is a really helpful concept, I think. An open system is basically any application or environment where there's a potentially endless stream of new information or stimuli.
Like email, social media feeds, the whole internet.
Exactly. They have no natural endpoint. You can keep scrolling, keep clicking, keep refreshing indefinitely. These are prime candidates for causing overstimulation and derailing their focus.
Especially if you start your day with them.
Definitely. Meurisse gives the example of checking Facebook. First thing, you can easily lose an hour before you even realize it, and then find it much harder to motivate yourself for real work.
Because they're designed to keep you engaged indefinitely.
Right. Closed systems, on the other hand, are applications or tasks with a more defined scope and fewer built-in distractions.
Like a Word document, or Excel, or presentation software.
Yes.
Right.
When you're working within those, the potential for distraction is much lower, assuming you're not actively switching away. Meurisse mentions his own habit of opening his writing software before checking anything else online.
Starting the day in a closed system to protect that initial focus.
Precisely. It prevents that immediate dopamine hit from the open systems and makes it easier to ease into more demanding, focused work. What you do first thing really sets the trajectory for your focus levels for the rest of the day.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, so you do the detox, you implement these strategies for focus.
Yeah.
But then life happens. How do you avoid slipping back into the old habits? The book calls it dopamine relapse, right?
Yeah, and it acknowledges that relapse is almost inevitable if you're not careful. Old habits are strong, and the world is full of temptations.
So what can you do?
First, awareness again. Be vigilant. Learn to recognize the signs when you start relapsing, when focus feels harder again, when you're reaching for distractions more often. Acknowledge it without judgment and just recommit to your routines.
Don't beat yourself up about it.
Absolutely not. Meurisse stresses that guilt is counterproductive, except that you'll have off days, maybe even off weeks. The key is just to notice it and restart your positive habits as soon as you can.
Okay, what else?
Understand that it is a battle. The book reminds you that the world is kind of against you in this sense. Marketers, app developers, content creators, everyone wants a piece of your attention. Your focus is valuable, both to them and, more importantly, to you for achieving your goals. You have to actively choose to protect it with habits and systems.
It requires conscious effort.
It does. Another tip is to prepare a contingency plan. Think about how you're most likely to get derailed. What are your specific triggers? Revisit that can'ts list. Mentally walk through potential relapse scenarios and decide in advance how you want to react.
Pre-planning your response.
Exactly. And the goal isn't necessarily to live in a state of permanent detox, but to build a sustainable system of habits like that simple daily routine that helps you manage stimulation and prioritize focus consistently over the long term.
So it becomes less about willpower and more about routine.
And one final really interesting strategy Meurisse suggests is consciously cultivating what he calls the here and now neurotransmitters.
Okay, what are those?
These are chemicals like endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin, things that promote feelings of calm, presence, well-being, and connection. They're kind of the opposite of dopamine's restless-seeking energy.
So how do you cultivate those?
Through specific activities. Things like mindfulness meditation focusing on your breath or senses. gentle stretching, which relaxes the body. Practicing mindfulness in everyday activities like really tasting your food or paying attention to the sensations of washing dishes.
Being present?
Yes. Also, contemplative walking, just observing your surroundings without judgment,
Mm.
engaging in deep, meaningful conversations with people, which boosts oxytocin, the love hormone, and even perhaps counterintuitively, embracing boredom.
Embracing boredom. How does that help?
By practicing just being without external stimulation, sitting quietly, eating in silence, walking aimlessly, you deliberately lower your stimulation baseline and become more comfortable with less input.
Those all sound like really grounding practices, things you could weave into your day.
Definitely. The idea is to actively balance out the dopamine drive with activities that promote calm and presence. And the book finishes by suggesting a 30-day challenge. Commit to a simple daily routine, incorporating some of these focus-enhancing and calming habits for a month to really solidify them.
Or explore other books in his series if you want to keep building those skills.
Right. So the core message running through all of this seems to be about choice.
Yeah. You can either let your environment and its constant stimuli dictate where your focus goes,
Or you can make a conscious decision to take back control.
and the benefits seem pretty compelling. Avoiding that constant overstimulation makes it easier to do the important stuff, sure, but maybe also leads to a deeper kind of satisfaction.
That's what Meurisse argues, a more lasting sense of fulfillment from your work, your hobbies, your relationships, compared to just chasing fleeting excitement, and ultimately being more productive and actually achieving those goals that matter.
It's about stopping letting your brain get hijacked, really, taking back the reins for a healthier, more focused life.
Well put. It's an ongoing practice, not a one-time fix.
So, a final thought for everyone listening, maybe something to chew on. Based on everything we've talked about today, what's just one small change, one little step you could take today to start reclaiming some of that focus and nudge yourself just a bit closer to those important long-term goals?